Welcome back to Frank's Model Aviation Workshop. We're going to be starting a new build series. Going to be doing the Goldberg Tiger 2, smaller version of the Tiger 60. That's pretty popular. I see a lot of people building that one. But I just happen to have this kit in the stash, so we'll do a build series on it. So if you like this type of content, consider subscribing to my channel. Hit that notification bell so that you'll be notified of the future installments of this build. And like and share my videos. I really appreciate it. So without further ado, let's get going. Okay, we're going to start off building the horizontal stabilizer. First thing we got to do is lay out this, or pin this hinge stick in place. But before I do that, I want to square up one edge. I've got a good ½ inch to deal with, so I'm going to square up one side. And then I'll cut it to length. I'm going to leave the line and then I'll sand it to shape, or sand it to the proper length. And I cut it exactly perfect. All right, don't have to sand it. So what I like to do is I'll pin it in place on each end, right where I want it. And you don't want to pin too close to the end. You might split your wood. So I come in about a ½ inch or so. And I'll take a straight edge and make sure I have it pressed up against these two ends. And as you can see, you can pull that in a little bit. So I'm going to pull it in and I'm going to put a couple more pins in. That way you know that trailing edge is exactly straight. Shouldn't need this anymore. Next two pieces, well, not the next two, but close to next. I want to take the stiffest ones, or the stiffest pieces, and put them on the trailing edge, because I don't want any kind of flex. So it's going to be these two. So, pin the hinge stick over. Now we're going to trim one of these as the brace and glue it to the hinge stick. So basically I'm going to mark one in. And I'm going to use my square to cut it straight. Or my miter box to cut it straight, I should say. What I'm doing here is just getting that angle just perfect, or as perfect as I can. Getting there. I like to make sure they're exactly the way they're supposed to be. That way the glue joints gonna be nice. Okay, now we'll do this. I'm going to leave the line so I can sand to it. Okay, so that's that. Now we'll glue that on. I'm going to use medium CA. Stab center, stab doubler are next. Now they put a nice little laser cut center line on there, so I'm just gonna line that up. And they don't have, it's not perfect, so I'm gonna add to it. A 16th, I think, should work. I'm gonna put a 16th inch on the end of this so that it'll be the same size as the plans, because these are laser cut short, so I'm gonna add to it. I'm just going to use some of this. It's the other parts for the wing and stuff, so I can use part of it. I'll just center it on there. I don't know about you guys, but I like my parts to be exactly the outline of the plan, if at all possible. Should be perfect. And it is. 1/16 was the trick. Might even be less than a 16th. Yeah, that'll be perfect. Okay, so let's mark that. So I know where to center this at. what I'm doing is making sure that when I put these on, it's going to be straight. Yeah, these sticks are warped, so I'm gonna have to put a straight edge on the leading edge as well. So we'll get this glued in. See what that other one looks like. All right. Okay, so now we'll get these glued in. Next step, leading edges. I want to make sure I get both these exactly the same. One's a little bit straighter than the other. This one's got quite a warp in it. I wonder if I got any more of these. Yeah, I do. I'm going to use two of the straightest ones. I'm going to use those. I'm just fine sanding it to the right exact angle. And I'm cutting it to length. I know these videos on building the tail feathers don't get many views. And I don't blame you, it's kind of boring. That's perfect. So I'll glue it on here, and then I'll use the straight edge to make it straight. It's not straight. Yeah, sometimes you gotta make adjustments, because these are laser cuts, so you gotta go with that. So I hope everybody's having a better flying season than I've been having. I'm a better builder than I am a flyer, that's for sure. Okay. Stab tips. I'm just wicking a little thin CA in these gusset areas. Just to make sure they're well glued. Okay. Okay, now we're going to put in these trusses. And when you do these, you don't want to force them. You just want them to fit in there just perfect. So we'll get going on that. Some of them you just got to do by hand. These don't require pins. Once the glue sets, they'll be good. Okay, so I got all the trusses in. They're all even with the, or flush with the surface. Now I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put a little reinforcement glue fillet on each little corner, and that'll strengthen them a little bit. It doesn't need much, just enough to kind of fill in the gaps and strengthen up those joints. Okay. Next step is to do the elevator. So it says to butt it up against one side and cut it 1/8 of an inch short on the other. So mark it exact. And then I'm going to use my clear ruler to get it perfect. I guess I should see if it's square first. I'm going to square this off. Matter of fact, I'm going to square both ends. So I'm going to have to remark it. Wasn't much different anyway. Just making sure it's as square as it can be. Well, I'm having a heck of a time here. What I'm trying to do is get this perfectly no gap here, so when I do this other side, I'll get the gap perfect over there too. That's about as perfect as I'm going to get it. Now I'll mark this. Let's see what that looks like over here. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so Okay, so that gives me a nice gap there. I like it. So I'm going to mark the center line here. Okay, so what I did, I put a center line on this thing, so I'll have my exact gap on both sides. That looks pretty good. So, what I gotta do now, I need to mark where that torque rod goes. I don't know why I feel so disorganized right now. Oh, I think I gotta bend that torque rod too. See, now it's wanting me to bevel this hinge and everything before I do that torque rod. I think I should split this and then do the hinges, then do the torque rod. So, because you can always, if they're not lined up perfectly flat, you can always bend the torque rod and get them perfect. So I might have to deviate from the plans because I don't like this idea, but I need to bend this torque rod first. I'm gonna find it. This is it right here. Okay. So it's want me to use this template, which is actually smaller than the original plan sheet. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to split that torque rod down the center. That's what I'm going to do. That is 2 5/8. One 5/16. Yeah, right there. We gotta split this down a little. It's 3 3/4. That should be 1 3/8, or 2, yeah, 1 7. I'm sorry. Yeah. we're going 1 7/8. And I'll mark this where I'm going to bend it. Boy, that's tough. Why do they do this? Okay, so after all that, I ended up messing up my bends. I'm a little shallow, and I'm not happy with the length of these, of the push rod or torque rod that goes into the elevator. As we all know, these, or at least the people that have built these in the past, the Tiger 2 is known to have elevator flutter, and I think part of it is due to the fact that the torque rod only goes in like a 1/2 inch, and you got this 1.5 inch elevator that has to, you know, is putting all that pressure on just that little 1/2 inch. So what I am going to do, because I'm not happy with the stock or the kit wood, because it's about 1/8 of an inch shy of the ends here. So I went and had some 1/4 inch balsa, so I recut it to where it's flush with the ends, remade my marks, and I bent a new torque rod that goes in about 1 1/8 inches. So it'll slide in there just perfect like that, and that way I have torque rod all the way out almost to the end here. So I'll bring you in close to see what this looks like. So you can see I bent this new. I went to the hobby shop, our local hobby shop, and got me some 3/32 piano wire and re-bent this. So, and what I used to bend this, because if you ever tried to bend 3/32 inch piano wire with a pair of pliers on your bare hands, it's really tough to get a good 90, you know. So I'll show you what I use to bend it. I use this fancy schmancy bender I got off of, I think I found it on eBay actually. I just looked up wire bender or something like that, and this came up. This one has an infinity sticker. I don't know what that means, or if it means anything, but comes with all kinds of little attachments. So you know, you pinch your wire in here and you just bend it around to a 90. It'll bend a sharp 90. You just put whatever round piece you need to get it close, and that's what I used to bend this. And man, it made it like butter. So what I'm going to do, now that I got this drilled, bent, and the way I drilled it, I stuck it in my, I got a drill press, and I just kind of held this like this at a 90, used my miter box, and I just drilled straight down 1 1/8 inches, or I think it was 1 1/4 inches, to compensate for the recess here. And I did that on both these and bent that, and it just fits down in there so perfect. I don't want to push it any further. I won't be able to get it out. So now what I'm going to do, since I got that done, I'm not going to bevel this yet. The plans want you to glue this thing in after you bevel it, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave this all one big piece. I'll hinge my elevator, hinge my stabilizer, put these together real tight and tape them, and I'm going to contour this whole perimeter except for where it is on the fuselage top. I'll leave that nice and sharp, but I'll do that. Then we'll cut this off without this wire in here, because it's going to fit in there perfect. I'm going to cut that off
around these edges. Then I'll epoxy this in after we do the bevel. And I'm not going to bevel this until actually, I'm not going to cut them apart until I bevel it. But I'm not going to bevel it until I get the whole perimeter contoured. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to hinge. I'll unpin this thing. It's dry. It's been a few days now. But I'll unpin it. We'll hinge up the stabilizer in the elevator and take it apart. We'll take this thing out, tape it, and you hinge it up and tape it together, and we'll do the contours. One more thing I noticed is these hinge locations are pretty far apart on each side. So I'm thinking I'm going to take these two center ones and moving them out one hinge width, because I have the torque rod here that's holding them together. Well, maybe not. I was thinking about maybe even adding another hinge, but I think for now I'm going to leave it be. So we'll get this unpinned and get all these hinged up. I'm going to be using CA hinges, and I use this, it's the centering tool that they give you in the Goldberg kits. That's what I'll be using. And on the trailing edge of the stabilizer, I'm only centering just where the hinge is going to be, because I don't like to see a whole groove all the way down my stabilizer trailing edge. You're not going to see it once it's covered and hinged, but it just bothers me. So we'll get this thing unpinned and hinge this thing up. The weather's been so nice out here lately. I haven't been wanting to be in here building. I've been outside doing stuff. So it's late now, so it's a good time to come up here in the shop and build. So we'll just take it where those hinge marks, as you can see, I think you can see it in there. I just marked the hinges where they're at. I'm just going to center just that area. See if I can even see that. And I'll try to keep it in frame. So I'm just going to run this. So you can see the groove right there. Just double checking them. And I already did the center line on this one. You can probably see it in the light, maybe. So I'm going to start by doing my hinges on the elevator, then I'll do the stabilizer. Okay, so when you do these hinges, you want to take your time to make sure you got them as centered as you can get them.
I just like to start real lightly with the knife. And once you get it started, you can gradually go a little deeper. I have special hinge slotting tools, but they don't seem to do as well as doing these things by hand. You want to be careful you don't split the wood. Okay, so that's one. Let's put a hinge in and see what it looks like. I marked my hinge's center line so that I know that I get it in there just right. That looks good. After my mishap with the extra 300, it made me want to take a step back in my journey to learn how to fly. Apparently I was a little too overconfident. So the P40 is going to be put away until I get this thing done and I get some flying time in, so I can, because I want to be able to made in the P40 when it's done. And you can't really do that if you don't know how to fly. I know I probably got a bunch of disappointed people, but that's just the way it goes. These kits are getting harder and harder to find too, so
And when you do find them, they're an arm and a leg, so I don't want to like plow them into the ground every time I build one. So I'm just gonna step back, take my time, learn how to fly. Okay. Now, the trick I like to do to make sure I have these things centered is I'll stick a straight pin. Well, these are going to require a couple. So you stick a straight pin in the center, but you're probably not seeing it. I'll show it to you though. Stick a straight pin down the center line there. When you stick these back in, there's your center. And then you leave them straight pins in till you go to hinge them permanently. And you'll stick them in here. And as you can see, you'll have them centered up. So now we will, well, let me finish straight pinning these, and then I'll hinge the other side. One more to go. There it is. They're all centered. Now I'll set this aside and get this thing slotted. one. Two. Now, you gotta really take your time here. You don't want to get them off center. I mean, you won't probably really notice it, but you'll notice it when you've set it flat. You know, your elevator won't be lined up. Alright, now it's time to test fit. And just like I thought, there had a couple that were off on this side. Now, once you get the hinges in there, you just take these pins out.
And there you have it. And what I'm going to do now, I'll tape this down. So the tape sticks, I'm going to take the dust off of it. Squeeze it tight and put the tape down. And I'll turn it over and do the same thing on the other side. Oops. I guess the hinges were good. Looks flat to me. All right, let's start with that, getting that trailing edge straight. Well, that's some hard balsa there. Okay. So what I like to do with these Goldberg kits, especially, you know, the trainer style, is I'll match up. See, here's the tail end of the fuselage. I'll match up this with the tail end. And I've already done it, but I put a mark on each side. That'll tell me this top side, I want to keep that flat. The bottom side will get rounded because the fuselage has a round to it. So, you know, where it sets in. So I'll keep that flat on the top only. Okay, so off camera, I assembled my rounding tool and I put 80 grit sandpaper in there. And I went ahead and I rounded the leading edge and the trailing edge and the tips, all with the elevator hinged up and taped on. I had it taped on. Got that all rounded. Next step, I'm going to take this elevator off and we'll bevel the front leading edge of it. Then we'll separate it. I got my marks where it separates. We'll separate it and then round the root end there. And that should almost complete the elevator or the horizontal stabilizer. So let's get going. Okay, so we'll take the elevator off and turn around, and we're going to tape it to the edge of the table, just like that.
not only will I tape, I could probably leave it like that. It might last. But I'm going to add just a little section in here just to make sure it is held tightly to the table. That way it ain't going to move. So I went ahead and I made my beveling tool. And these things are pretty fragile. So what I did was I ran epoxy in here just to make it a little stronger. This is just C8 on. And I got 180 on there. But I first start my bevel with this, the microplane. So the way I do that is I'll put that beveling tool here and I'll match that angle with the beveling tool or with the microplane. And then I'll kind of just remember that, run a few lines until I get to the center. And then we'll finish it up with this. We'll sand it smooth with the 180. So let's get going. I always want to make sure your blade stays clean. Might need to put a new blade in this thing. It's pretty dull. It did do the P40. And when you get close to this edge over here, you want to lift up before you get there because you'll take too much off. The lighting sucks right here. Now I'll sand this to the center. The plans have you separate the two halves before you bevel it. I think it's a bad idea. So I went ahead and did it like this. Keep it whole. That way you know your bevel is going to be just right. I know the majority of the people out there don't want to see these easy planes built, but I'm just doing this for the beginners, and I need a good low wing plane to learn how to fly on before I ever even think about flying that P40. Trying to stay out of the camera view so you can see what's going on. Now I'm bringing that right to the center. I'm just about there. And then I'm done, we'll flip it over. That looks about it. Now we'll take this up and re-tape it the other way. You want to be careful taking the tape off too, because you don't want to rip your balsa wood grain off, and you end up filling. I think I might just put one piece back here. That might be good enough. Okay, we're back on the plane now. Pardon the pun. Remember, match your angle up. And then have at it. You always want to clear the stuff out of your plane too, because if you have wood shavings in there, it's going to rip your balsa wood. And double check your angle. You ever get curious? And it's on. So we'll keep doing this. A couple more swipes. You don't have to always start on the end. I always eyeball it to see where it's taking off and where it's lifting up. So I come down here a little bit, take some off. Okay, we'll leave her at that and see what it looks like. Just take your time doing this and you'll have a nice, clean, straight bevel. And before I cut this center section out, I'm going to hinge it back up, see what it looks like on the stabilizer. This side's pretty much done. You'll notice I'm not rushing it because you don't want to overdo it. If you sand too much over the center line, you'll have gaps that you'll have to deal with, and that's just a pain in the butt. That is pretty dang close. Okay, I'm gonna untape it, see what it looks like. Hard to see in the camera, but you can see right here where it's not quite there. I'll just do it by hand off the table, just like, you know, like that, until I get it nice on both sides. Okay, there's the elevator hinged up. Works good. Next up, we're going to separate the two halves around the root end, and then we'll dry fit the torque rod and hinge it back up, and then set the horizontal stabilizer aside until it's ready to cover, and then we'll get on to the fin, the vertical fin. It's turning out pretty good so far. Okay, I got my torque rod set to go in there, but first we need to separate these, separate your elevator halves, and I'm going to do that. I don't know if I can get the right angle there, so I'm going to have to do it by eyeball, which is no big deal. So I'll leave the line. Make sure I got you in focus. I'll zoom in a little bit. I'm going to leave the line, and we'll get this thing cut. I'm not putting any pressure on that saw because I don't want to tear my balsa wood. That's one. Okay, so it's this, at this point you want to mark which one's left, which one's right, because right now you have no real reference. So here's how it came off, so like this. So this will be right, this will be left. And I'm thinking of just putting a piece of tape on them because I don't want to write. It might show through the, I'm going to be covering it in cub yellow like the box. So I'm going to use a piece of tape with a right and a left because they're already sanded and everything. So we'll do that. And I'll mark it over here. So, because we're gonna be sanding here, so. All right, that'll do. Now we'll get the beveling tool and we'll carefully sand that round because you can easily make it not to where it's not straight. So I'm just gonna kind of like put it in there and rock it back and forth a little bit and just do maybe one direction. Just lightly. I'm just doing it really slow. That's the left side done. I didn't want to go all the way because I want to put 220 or maybe 220 in here and smooth it out better.
Okay. There, they're rounded. Now I'm gonna get some 220 and smooth that out a little bit. Okay, I smoothed it out a little bit. I used 320, so what I had handy, but they're it's not final sanded, but it's close. So what we'll do, I'll take my torque rod and we'll test fit it. Now we'll hinge it up. And my drilling must have been spot on because it's laying flat, and my angle on my torque rod must be perfect. So I got a good range of motion. It's not lifting off of the balsa wood or lifting off of the trailing edge of the stabilizer. So we got a good showing of the torque rod hinged up. This is what it's basically going to be when it's covered. This is what it'll look like. So that completes the horizontal stabilizer and elevator assembly of the Goldberg Tiger 2. That'll do it for this episode. Next episode, we will be doing the vertical fin and rudder. And the stabilizer turned out pretty good. I'm happy with it. Everything's functioning properly. Everything's lined up just perfect. And it's ready for covering once I get a final sand on it. But it's pretty dang close as it is. So if you like this type of content, please consider subscribing to my channel. And like and share my videos. I'd really appreciate it. And stay tuned for the next episode. Episode number 2 of the Goldberg Tiger 2 build series. Thanks for watching.